Meeting of the Board of Aldermen on Monday, March 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. via Zoom. The prayer will be offered by City Clerk Sue Levering, and Alderman Lou will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As president of the Board of Aldermen, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's order number 12, pursuant to the executive order 2020-4, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the city's website for the meeting link. To join by phone, dial 1-929-205-6099. The meeting ID is 818-8318-0777. The passcode is 603177. The public may also view the meeting via channel 16. Sorry. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website at nashua.nh.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall and the Nashua Public Library. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during the meeting will be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
I am present. I can hear the proceedings and I am alone.
Alderman Clee.
I am here. I can hear the proceedings, and at this time I am all alone.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I'm here. I'm alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Dowd.
I am present. I can hear everyone and I am here alone.
Alderman Karen.
I am here. I am alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Clemens.
I'm here. I'm by myself and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Lopez.
I'm here. I'm alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Tenza.
Present. I'm alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderwoman Lou.
I'm here alone and I can hear you.
Alderman Jettie.
Here with my wife and I can hear the proceedings.
Alderman Schmidt.
I'm present, alone, and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Laws.
I'm here, I'm alone, and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Cleaver.
Present, I'm alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Present, I'm at the hospital with my husband. A nurse or someone could be coming in at any time, and I'm using earphones.
Alderman Wilshire.
I am here, I'm alone, and I can hear everyone.
You have 15 in attendance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Tonight, we are gathered for a presentation on the Mohawk Tannery site. I'm not sure if I should recognize the mayor or Director Cummings, but whoever wants to go.
Yes, thanks, Madam President.
You're welcome.
Because it's been, Director Cummings is going to give the detailed presentation, but it's been a while since we visited this subject. That is the Mohawk Tannery, and therefore I thought I'd give a brief background of how we got to where we are. The Mohawk Tannery closed in about 1984, leaving behind some so-called lagoons, which are basically just holes dug in the earth, filled with tannery waste that was accumulated over many years. And they left, of course, without cleaning it up. Now, at various times over the course of the intervening decades, the EPA suggested that this technically could qualify as a Superfund site, but always warned the city against joining the Superfund list. And this has been done numerous times over many years, because they said the pollutants in the lagoons are not the most serious, are not migrating. And therefore, if we are on the Superfund list, we really never get reached because the funds would never go down far enough in the Superfund list. So they advise staying off the Superfund list. Now, of course, the city has had Superfund sites in the past, the most significant of which was the Gilson Road site, which was cleaned up by EPA Region 1 at a cost of many millions of dollars when I was mayor before. So the site has just remained dormant. There's been a little, a few things done, some buildings torn down, a little bit of cover work has been done, but the lagoons remain. And then several years ago, the EPA approached the city and a private developer and said that for the first time they were interested in getting involved in possibly working to clean up the site. And they indicated that the reason they were interested is that they thought, and this was critical, a public-private partnership could be arranged. And they thought that especially at the time, that the public-private aspect made this a project that they would devote some funds to. And what they meant by a public-private partnership is a partnership in which the EPA and a private developer would share the costs to do the cleanup. So we proceeded along that course. Initially, there was an EPA report regarding what was required for a cleanup. The EPA report recommended a consolidation of the waste into one area and a covering of the material. The potential developer was also on board at that time. And there was, following the EPA's decision that it would get involved in that type of cleanup, but would not get involved in a removal because that was two reasons: a lot more money, and they said you're just moving the waste from one place to another. After the EPA indicated that was its preferred solution, then there was an undertaking to determine what the approximate cost would be. Now that's taken some period of time, and they and the developer have exchanged plans and have arrived at least an approximate cost. The city along the way, of course, has encouraged this public-private partnership. Getting this area cleaned up would be certainly a benefit. It's been clear that the public-private partnership arises because the site would be developed by a private developer into housing or assisted living. There have been various ideas and plans presented, nothing definite yet to date. Possibly some commercial development out near the Broad Street Parkway, and there would be access to the Broad Street Parkway. Along the way, the city has made it very clear that we're very interested in the public-private partnership. That if a small amount of city funds were necessary to sort of close a gap or something, we might be willing to participate, but that under no conditions would we, pay for the cleanup, or we were most interested in the public-private partnership originally proposed by the EPA. And that's pretty much where we are now. They've sort of narrowed down the solution, begun to narrow down the costs. And we decided we should come to you now just because we hadn't reported to you for some time. And we wanted to just give you an update on where things stand at the present time. So I've given you an overview, but Mr. Cummings has been involved in very detailed discussions over time with the EPA, the developer. We have had some neighborhood meetings along the way, and Director Cummings will fill you in on the remaining details.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Cummings, good evening.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. I appreciate you making the opportunity this evening, as I'd like to give you a brief overview as to where we stand with the Mohawk Tannery project. I have a few goals that I'd like to accomplish this evening. First, I'm hoping to just provide some general background and history. I'm not sure whom on this board is actually familiar with this subject matter, and as it's been a new board since probably the last time we discussed this, I thought it would be good just to give an overall update on the subject matter. The update, though, is going to be really just confined to the last 2-3 years relative to the efforts, not anything of past history. And then lastly, I want to assess the appetite relative to a TIF, as this is something that had been discussed previously, and I'm just looking to get some direction and some feedback on the idea of using this type of tool for this specific project. So one of the things I thought I would do, and I promise I'm not going to share my screen for too long, as I know members don't like to have screen share up, but I thought it would be wise just to quickly show my screen if I could, and orientate everyone into where we are exactly talking about within the city of Nashua. So what you have up in front of you is a map that shows where my cursor is going down. That's the Broad Street Parkway right there. This is Fairmont Street right here. I give this to you just so you have some sort of orientation. And so over the next hour or so, you're going to hear me talk about differing land areas, and I just thought you'd like to have this type of context. So right here, this is what we refer to as the city property. That's quote unquote city right of way. This is up along again, the Broad Street Parkway. This blue is the Thimble Door site. And then just to the south of it, you have the Mohawk Tannery Site 1, Parcel 1, and the Mohawk Tannery Parcel 2, or what's referred to as the southern site. Here's the Nashua River along here. The Thimble Door is technically its own separate site, and that's just something folks should know from a context perspective. It's its own separate site from an environmental remediation standpoint, as it's a quote-unquote capped brownfield. And then this lower green area is actually the Mohawk Tannery. And it gets a little confusing as time goes on as I start to explain the project. Again, over here is the turnpike. So I just want folks to have that type of orientation as I begin to make my comments this evening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and just the memo I previously provided is just some good context. I won't read that memo, but rather just add some additional details that hopefully will add some sufficient background. So as the mayor said previously, just a few moments ago, the site is known as the former Mohawk Tannery site, also known as Granite State Leathers. It operated at the property between Fairmont and Warsaw, where it produced tanned hides for leather between 1924 and 1984. The Mohawk Tannery site consists of 2 contiguous parcels of approximately 15 acres each. And the tannery waste that was disposed, that was also part of the disposal operation, was mainly in the northern parcel, not in the southern parcel of the site. Chester Realty Trust is the current owner of the Mohawk Tannery site. EPA and Chester Realty have a settlement agreement for the site. It has been represented that the land area is under a purchase and sale agreement with the purchaser Baylock Holdings LLC. It is also my understanding that Baylock Holdings has a purchase and sale agreement also executed to acquire Thimble Door from the current owner. Finally, Baylock Holdings has expressed an interest in wanting to acquire some of the right of way that abuts the Broad Street Parkway. So I say that all to you to give you some context. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the environmental situation at the site. The tannery produced sludge and acidic residue, much of which was disposed of in 2 lagoons and other areas on the site. The sludge and the soils in the areas are contaminated with heavy metals and semi-volatile organic compounds, including, among other substances, dioxins, methylphenol, arsenic, antimony, cadmium, magnesium, pentylphenol, and benzoaphrin. Studies have also shown that ACM is found in some of the areas in the surface and within the subsurface of the soil. EPA and New Hampshire DES have been involved with many response activities at the Mohawk Tannery site since in and around about the summer of 1999. EPA and New Hampshire DES have provided that Baylock on the available information, has provided all the available information relative to the existing contamination on the site and the adjacent properties. EPA proposed the site for the national priorities list in May of 2000, but it was never listed. It was withheld from moving forward. The EPA performed an engineering evaluation cost analysis, which was referred to as an ECA, in 2002 for the site. EPA completed an amendment to the 2002 ECA in 2018, at which time it issued an administrative record for the ECA. The EPA then issued an action memorandum in September of 2019 for removal to address the site, for removal of the environmental hazards. EPA issued an administrative record on this in 2019 for that removal action. In September of 2019, the removal action called for the removal of approximately 56,000 cubic yards of contaminated sludge, soil, and other hazardous material. And the removal calls for it to be consolidated and encapsulated in an impermeable cap in and around the area of the Mohawk Tannery site, where approximately 68,150 cubic yards of contaminated sludge and overlaying soil is also currently present. Then the Baylock has represented that they would like to consolidate additional environmental hazards, which was on the Thimble Door site, and also the environmental hazard that is in the right of way of the city, which is mainly asbestos, into this consolidated capped site. My understanding is for this to occur, the EPA costed out the project to be somewhere between $8 and $14 million on their preferred alternative, which is, again, keeping the environmental hazards on site, but encapsulating it. My understanding is that through this public-private partnership, that price could be lowered. It has been represented that it could be represented significantly to something like $8 to $10 million. And at which point the private developer would undertake this with assistance from the EPA and the city of Nashua. Bear with me here, I'm just changing my screen. So the EPA recently updated their most recent public document on February 12th. I believe that was the administrative record that was produced previously in 2019. And there was a public comment period, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to get this memo to you. So you had the opportunity, if you so desired, to weigh in on this amendment. The amendment basically made it explicit, which I think everyone understood to be implicit from the 2019 document, which was to consolidate all the hazardous waste material that was in and along the various sites into the Mohawk Tannery site. Because of the way the EPA is organized, they were only looking at the site very specifically at the quote unquote Mohawk Tannery site and the environmental remediation that would be necessary. So this made it explicit that it would actually be more than just the Mohawk Tannery site as the current plan suggests. So to move this project forward, the private sector developer, Baylock Holdings, has represented that they would take on the remediation. They have entered into an agreement with the EPA, where the EPA has provided something like $6 million in assistance. So they can do the environmental remediation. My understanding, and some recent communication has just come into my office on Friday. We got an update from Baylock Holdings. I haven't had a chance yet to review it, but it had always been discussed previously that there would be something like 50,000 square feet of commercial activity on the site in terms of retail or other type of uses, and then somewhere around 250 to 300 units of apartments. And that was the, essentially the broad strokes uses that they would like to envision on that 30-ish acres. And so my understanding is that's still the current thought process, or something to that, to that degree or in that realm. And then the question has always come up because just, the idea of the cost for the cleanup being somewhere between $8 to $10 million. And I question whether that is even truly flushed out figure, but going with that number and understanding that the EPA is willing to commit somewhere around $6 million, there's a gap, and using the high end and just saying 10, there's a gap that needs to be filled. We had always previously represented that the city would be interested in some sort of small participation through a TIF. And I'm looking just to get some direction tonight to make sure that I am still in good stead to continue to represent that. There are more questions than probably answers at this point. I want to make that really clear for everyone. This is an ongoing conversation. When I originally started down this path most recently with the memo just a couple weeks ago, it was really just to get the ball started, to let this board know that coming over the next months or even year, somewhere in 21, somewhere in 22, this conversation was going to progress and get more substantial and substantive. And I thought that this would just be a good time to start the conversation so I could continue representing what the wishes may be of the Board of Aldermen and the administration, and try to progress the project if that was still something that this body desired. So I'll leave my comments there. I'm hoping to open it up to a little bit of a Q&A, and again, just remind folks that there might be a lot of questions that I don't have answers to yet, but we're working through that. I guess one other comment I would like to make is I know some members of this body have reached out to me and asked me specific questions. I've held off on responding to some of those questions because I don't have those answers. Particularly, I want to just say, Alderwoman Elizabeth Liu reached out to me to ask me specifically who would be responsible for the difference in the cleanup costs. And that's the exact question that I want to have tonight. I want to have a discussion on tonight is, how do we want to frame that conversation? What is the expectations? Who is going to be the responsible parties? And I think that that's a bigger conversation than any 1, 2, or 3 people. And it's predicated on this body providing some feedback to me. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, earlier you said that you were trying to do this briefing so that we would be able to participate in public comment. I believe that is closed as of Saturday. Not that the aldermen can't comment whenever they want, but I just figured I would share that with everybody.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Director Cummings? Alderman Clemens, yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. Yeah, that Mohawk Tannery site has been unfortunately linked to my family for years, and I suspect that it has to do with some of the negative health effects that a lot of my family has had over the years, just by the fact that a lot of them grew up there, lived in that neighborhood in either Little Florida or Fairmount Heights, and that just being around that, I think there's a lot of people in that neighborhood that have issues with their health, cancer, different things like that. So I definitely want to see the site cleaned up. I'm hesitant, however, I'm hesitant to use. It's one of those things where it's like you want to have the site cleaned up, but you also regret the fact that the people that made the mess aren't the ones paying. Especially where it hits a lot of people right at home. The other thing that I question is whether or not it would make sense to actually build more homes in that area, given the fact that there is such a significant, in my opinion, there are significant health risks to just living there. And I don't know that we could guarantee, and these are the things that I would want to see, is what kind of guarantees are in place that stuff, whatever they bury there, is going to remain buried, and what is the action plan if in the future, it starts to leak or something like that. What are the measures 100 years from now when it starts to leak, and then what's built around there? Do people have to move in order for us to be able to go into a site like that and prevent it from leaking in the future? These are answers that I don't think we have, that we can truly answer. And unfortunately, until we can get some solid answers on stuff like that, I would not be in favor of putting more houses in an area like that. To me, I'm all for cleaning it up, but we have to be responsible in the way that we do it, and we have to make sure that we have a plan for the future. And I mean years and years and years down the road, that there's money set aside, that there's a clear, defined plan of what to do if something was to go wrong, with the site after it's been capped. So I would need to see those types of details in order to support anything related to that site.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. I think that those are really good points.
And that's Alderman Clemens. That's one thing that we have been talking with the EPA about and DES from the state. Who's going to monitor this? Who's going to, who's responsible if there is the type of situation you described, of some leakage? Now, it's downhill to the river and uphill to the neighborhood. So if there's leakage, it's, very likely would be not towards the neighborhood, but towards the river. They say that this is all pretty dormant, and maybe they're right, but still there needs to be a monitoring and plan. And we've made it clear that the city does not wish to take over that responsibility, and that it needs to be either DES or the EPA.
You're on mute, Madam President.
Is there something they can do when they cap these lagoons? Like they do when they cap asbestos? I mean, they have monitoring wells and stuff like that. Is there something they can do there with that? Same kind of process?
That's my understanding, is there would be active monitoring occurring and annual inspections. And my understanding is an active management plan. That would have, my understanding is part of the EPA and DES regulations will make that explicitly clear. The maintenance of it and the ongoing, assurance that we're getting what is, outlined in the regulations is still something that I want to learn more about, so I don't misrepresent anything to this body. I have my concerns, no doubt, but it's definitely something that I know the EPA, DES, and Baylock is very well aware of.
Thank you. Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Madam President. Director Cummings, just asking a question about the TIF. I assume that this will be, the idea is to establish a TIF to support a bond to make up for the city's, contribution to this project. Is that how it would work, similar to the Performing Arts Center?
Yes, if I may, yes. In theory, that's how it would work. No negotiations have occurred. Nothing like that has happened. It's been all very high level in terms of what tools would be available at the federal level, even at the state level. The question was asked, and then at the local level. And obviously, the readily tool that we have available is the TIF. And I think that that's something that we had 2 or 3 years ago suggested would be, something we would be willing to entertain. And that's something we had a small appetite for. But we also made it very clear that this was a public-private partnership where we had every expectation that, it would be the federal government, the EPA, the developer, and the city itself participating if we were to go this route. That was what was represented to me and to the mayor and others on city staff when this conversation started, some 36 months ago or thereabouts. I guess I can't begin to speak to how big the TIF will be. I can't begin to speak to how we would structure it. Those are all things that we would need to figure out. And I just am looking to find out, is this something we want to actually continue talking about and have on the table for discussion? What I know is I need to ask for a lot of additional information from Baylock Holdings. And I've asked for some of this information previously, but for me to be able to make a recommendation to you and to the mayor, I need some due diligence and some data to provide that. For instance, sources and uses, how is this deal actually going to be structured financially? What's the return on equity that one would be projecting? What's the RRR? These standard real estate type of calculations, I think I have a responsibility to do, so then I can represent to you, but for this type of tool, this project wouldn't move forward. And that's really what I need to make sure, I can do, so everyone has a comfort level in providing the type of financial support that may be necessary.
Just as a follow-up, Madam President, if I may. And I think you understand, it's tough for us to take a position on the TIF without really knowing what level of bonding would be necessary, and what the what the return to the city would be. My feelings on the issue, and I appreciate you bringing this forward to us and having this conversation. I think that's an important piece of property for the city to make active again. I think that I think they're called the secant walls that the EPA is proposing. Actually does a better job of containing the sludge than is being contained right now. So I am, optimistic about this project, and I'm hoping we can have more information, before we make any final decisions on it. Thanks.
Agreed. Yep.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. Director Cummings, you mentioned that they're going to remove the lagoons and try to make it into one. We're talking about two different sites, but well, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but I had many dealings with that area over my previous career. Traversed it. As you know, the topography in some places, there's some pretty good valleys going down to a river and stuff like that. Would this removal of the topsoil that is contaminated, would that be used to smooth out the topography that is currently naturally there right now? And would that be in turn in such a way to become a buildable area with that base underneath?
I don't know, Alderman O'Brien, whether the topsoil or not, or where that topsoil is that you're talking about. I think anything that has contaminated soil has been represented to be part of the encapsulated area. So I think everything, as I understand it, everything in the site that is quote unquote contaminated. And again, I'm going to define the site. The project site is Mohawk Tannery, Thimble Door, and partially some of the city's right of way, which has asbestos on it, would all get consolidated into a certain area and get capped. My understanding is this capped area is something significant, 2 to 2.5 acres, would all get consolidated into one area, with the theory being you'd have some usable land to develop.
Mm-hmm. I'll follow up if I may, Madam President.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yeah. I don't know. Someday, if you want, we'll go for a walk through it. But from what I remember, there is a couple of valleys and stuff like that. But I would like to share Alderman Tenz's anticipation. Right now, if we don't do anything with this, it's not going to go away. The thing is, we have a good history with the old Sylvester facility that is off of Gilson Road. That was something that we did receive the Superfund help with, but there's been no leakage. As a matter of fact, the area is greatly improved. And so I think the EPA does have a way in dealing with a lot of this. And it would be probably great to see this area come back, particularly for the health of the neighborhood, as mentioned by Alderman Clemens. Thank you.
Alderman Dowd.
Yes, couple things. A few of us attended the EPA briefings back in the day they provided how they would encapsulate all of this material. And to me, they've done it several places, and it was a fairly safe way of encapsulating it. They basically build a dam around the area and pour the material in, and it can't leak out. But they would, I understand that the EPA would be monitoring it. It would become their responsibility. And then they cap it. I think that perhaps it might be a good idea to get that briefing one more time, because we have a lot of new people that haven't seen it. The other thing is that this whole project won't go anywhere if we don't allow the developer to develop the property after they encapsulate the material, because otherwise, why would he spend that money? My other concern is, and I don't know if we've ever considered it, I know we keep talking about it's going to tie into the Broad Street Parkway or Veterans Parkway if we get that far. But have we thought about, is it going to be a stop sign, a traffic light? Have we done a traffic study as to what we think the number of cars would be? That will have to be done at some point, probably not right this minute, but would have to be done at some point, because I think from the discussions we had, including the Tamposi piece, that there could be a lot of traffic coming out of that area. And it might have to be a traffic light. Who's paying for it? Who's paying for the enhanced intersection? And I'm guessing that, you know, if it's not part of the project, it's going to become part of a budget item. So I just wonder or not if that's been covered or not.
Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you. So no, that hasn't been covered yet, but I think it's a good point that I want to just kind of hit upon. So right now on the Broad Street Parkway, there is only one access point. It is what's referred to as a limited access roadway. It has always been planned that a quote unquote curb cut would happen in one designated area, which just so happens to be right along where the thimble door and the city's right of way is. And I know it's the intention of Baylock to construct a roadway that could accommodate the development that they are talking about and they're anticipating. We as a city have also, from a long-term planning perspective, told them that we need to make sure that we also anticipate other type of development happening at the site, so we don't preclude ourselves from any type of future development that might not be done by Baylock itself. Studies to get us that far and what type of infrastructure, how much cost has not been done yet. I do think that the Baylock will represent to us that they'll want us, the city, to entertain all that type of infrastructure investment. So that's going to be a conversation to be had for sure as the conversation moves on, and I suspect it will be a negotiating point as we continue, if we continue, and that's something that we should be thinking about and should be in the back of our mind. Madam President, I do want to just touch upon one comment that Alderman Dowd made when he first started his comments, which he had mentioned that the EPA is going to quote unquote do the monitoring. I just want to clarify for the record, the EPA cannot do the monitoring. My understanding is the DES has the responsibility of doing the monitoring, or other entities, not the EPA. And in this instance, my understanding is they've actually have the onus of the quote unquote monitoring happening with Baylock itself. So Baylock has, as I understand it, agreed to do the monitoring and the operations and the ongoing oversight of that area, which I think is a little bit of a concern. And I've raised this with everyone so far, and I think it's something that we're going to need to continue to talk about moving forward. But DES has indicated that they are not going to take on the onus of it. EPA is precluded from doing it, and the city has also has said that we are not interested in taking on the O&M.
Quick follow-up.
Alderman Dowd.
Yeah, I guess that would be one thing we need to nail down, is who is going to do the monitoring. And I wouldn't be, based on what I had seen from those presentations, I don't know if we have the local expertise to do that. So that would either be a cost to the city if it's not being picked up by somebody else. The other thing is, I don't know, the newer members of the board may not realize that Tamposis have a piece of land they haven't been able to develop because they haven't had street access. But if this is opened up to the Broad Street Parkway, they would have access, and there would be that development as well. So, which from a tax standpoint would be good, because there's a lot of taxable property there that add to our tax base. But, these are a lot of things that were in presentations previously that perhaps we ought to resurrect.
And if I may, Madam President, I just want to clarify. So there is money, as I understand it, set aside to do the ongoing O&M. It's just who will do it and access that funding. is, I think, the question to be had. And of course, one of my concerns is enforcement. If we see, if the O&M is with the EPA or the DES and the city of Nashua doesn't have the ability to enforce it, we're the ones that have to live with it. So if something happens, we want to make sure that we have some strong oversight on that front. So again, this is a subject area that is going to need more conversation, so everyone gets to a comfort level. But it's one that I want everyone to be aware of.
Thank you. Alderwoman Kelly.
Thank you, Alderman Wilshire. Actually, Alderman Dowd beat me to it, but I was going to ask if there was a possibility for either the EPA or Baylock to give a similar presentation that they did to the neighborhood. There was a neighborhood discussion maybe a year ago. Does that sound about right? And Alderman Tenza was there, but they got into a lot of the specifics, and it sounds like it would be nice for some of us to get a refresher on sort of what the plan is. I kind of echo a lot of what's been said in terms of want a refresher on what the plan is, sort of a little bit more detail around what that difference between what the EPA is bringing forward and what the city would have to cover before really committing to any sort of funding, tax, incremental finance district or anything like that.
Thank you, Alderwoman Kelly. So just to be clear, the plan, so there's a couple different plans. The one I think you were just referencing is the plan that the EPA put out through their ECA and their preferred alternative, in which they provided 3 or 4 scenarios and alternatives, and then one rose to the top. And that is the alternative that Baylock Holdings would have to execute on. Now, my understanding is Baylock Holdings has represented that he can do it cheaper, and that company can do it cheaper than the EPA. So there's a cost savings there. And so we definitely need to have, I think, multiple conversations, one with the EPA as suggested, and I can ask them to come in and give a briefing similar to what they did with the neighborhood. And then that's one plan. And then the question is do we want to move forward with the Baylock proposal or plan with the development to be able to execute on it? I think the only way you're going to see movement is if it's through this public-private type partnership, because the EPA has represented that if this goes the traditional route, this site would be at lower on the list compared to all the other contaminated sites across the country. So that's one of the reasons why they have this interest in pursuing this type of alternative.
If I could follow up, Alderman Wilshire.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think it would be appropriate to hear from them again, especially I wasn't aware that there was an alternative to the APA doing it, and I'd like to know sort of what are the risks and, again, the monitoring piece if the EPA isn't the one executing their plan. So I definitely think more information is key here, but I do believe that this neighborhood has waited a very long time to have this cleaned up, and we've had quite a few community members who have been very vocal on this, and I think we should prioritize cleaning this up, but making sure we're being safe about how we do it and fair about how we do it. Because as one of the aldermen before me said, ideally the company that made the mess would clean it up, but that company is no longer there, and this is still a piece of our city.
Next, I have Alderman Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam President. This is such a complicated issue. It's all the puzzle pieces have to come together at the right time and the right place. But that piece of land is so valuable to this city. If we could clean it, that's a real benefit. If we could put business in there, that's another good benefit. But I just have a specific ask for Director Cummings. Could you gather all the data that we have on this project and put it in one place where we can go and do our own research on it? I know there's some maps that were out there. There were some plans that we could see, but I don't have them all. And I'm not one of the newer people. So if the newer people don't have any of them, it would be really, really nice to have access to them. Thank you.
Director Cummings.
Yes, so I'm happy to try to put up what I have. What I want to make sure you're aware of, though, is the EPA has a project-specific site, which in my memo to the Board of Aldermen, I included a link, which if you were to click on that link, it has all the EPA-related documents consolidated onto one site. So I guess I can look at trying to get City of Nashua and more specifically, maybe the Baylock representations out on the site. Now, as a reminder, I haven't been given a lot of this information that I've been asking for. So, some just came in recently on Friday to me, but some of this is still kind of this is lifetime type stuff, hot off the presses. And I absolutely agree with you. All the puzzle pieces need to fit together to make this work.
Alderman Clemmons.
Thank you very much. As far as the monitoring, I wanted to make this point because, in regards to the TIF and things like that, I don't mind a TIF if we're going to do this correctly and we're going to do it safely and the neighborhood is going to be protected, and there is a clear, defined plan in place, not only for how to encapsulate this, but how to monitor it, what we're looking for, and a remediation plan for the future as well. In other words, to set money aside for the future as sort of an insurance and in case of, and in a set of money that can't be touched unless there is an issue that needs to be remediated. And then that way that money is there in the future so that we can quickly go and fix whatever problem may arise. Because it's not, I do not believe and that there won't be an issue in the future. It's just the way things work, right? The difference here is that you encapsulate asbestos and the asbestos starts to leak or whatever. It's granule stuff. It's you can go dig down and recapsulate it. This stuff is heavy metal, real bad stuff that if this starts to leak out is going to really and has wreaked havoc. So I guess to reiterate my point is I'd like to see more of a plan, but also in regards to the private company being the one to monitor that, no way. Under no circumstances would I agree to that. I don't mind if they, in fact, I do agree that they should probably have to pay for the monitoring, but the city of Nashua should do that. Either the city of Nashua or the state of New Hampshire should do that because we want to make sure that it's being done with the public interest in mind. And it's no bad reputation on the company, but we all know that, corporations have their interests and the government has its interests. And our interest is to protect the environment and to protect the people that are going to be living there and in that neighborhood. And under no circumstances should a non-government agency be in charge of monitoring that. So that, to me, if that's the only way forward, then to me that's a non-starter. So I just wanted that on the record as well.
Alderman Lopez. Oh, sorry, Tim.
So similar to what Alderman Clemmons had said earlier, it was stated that, we are going to have to live with this. We are not going to have to live with this. The people who are living there are going to have to live with this, and the people who are living on the site do. So I echo what Alderman Clemmons is saying, and I understand where he's coming from because of his personal history, because those are the concerns that I'm hearing from the neighbors, where we can't have miscommunication. We can't cut any corners. We need to make sure that we aren't just burying something and then hoping it never rears its head because of the nature of it and because these neighborhoods have been burned before, literally burned. Like there has been a fire which has deposited contaminants all over the site. So going back to what Alderman O'Brien was probably referencing, even the surface level is going to have to be looked at and confirmed to be safe if we start disturbing it and moving it around. So this is a project, I think, where we need to be very, very conscious of public attention and public engagement, because there's going to be a lot of questions and there's going to be a lot of concerns. And it's not local neighborhood people who are coming out because they want to be involved. It's because they're concerned about their homes and their family's safety and how this is going to affect them. So I think it's very important that we improve our transparency and our communication, particularly. This project began under, some of it an inauspicious foot because there was miscommunication on the parts of the city as to who the developers were, who even knew who the developers were, whether there were meetings or whether there were parking lot encounters or whatever. I think moving forward, especially if the aldermen are going to have to be put in the situation of making decisions about this, and now is our time, we need to have very clear communication on what is being negotiated and what those terms are. Because I think in the past, it hasn't been clear. I was actually under the impression that several times it was stated the city wouldn't be using the TIF for cleanup costs at all. We would be using it for infrastructure and that type of thing. And that's important for other aldermen to consider, because if we TIF the development for the tanneries, cleanup and all that kind of stuff, it extends the time in which we're not collecting any tax revenue. And we want to be conscious of that, particularly if we do start other development projects that are nearby, which would give us tax revenue in order to offset the expenses and really see that benefit. All that being said, and again, in communication with the residents in the area, they really do want to see this cleaned up. There's going to be no development or tax revenue to be had if we don't figure out a solution out of a 36-year-old dilemma. So it is important for us to make this work. And that's why I think communication is necessary, because that will bring all of the players in alignment and all those puzzle pieces, because you can't put a puzzle together when you're blindfolded. So we need to be very clear about what the communications are. I think Alderman Clemens made a great point about our own public health, environmental health being involved, because I'm not really confident that the state, even a 2-year changing policy board group of people, is going to provide the kind of long-lasting, consistent attention to this that our neighbors deserve. So I would like, when we do get to any negotiations or discussions, to have it discussed that our environmental health department be either in charge of or involved in that process, and that be funded by the property holders or taxes or whatever. Another thing I want to bring to attention is the actual construction process. Those neighborhoods have had a very difficult time with other construction projects in the immediate area. They're very concerned about heavy vehicle traffic on Fairmont Street, or the increase of vehicle traffic should that street ever be used for either the Tamposi's project or the developers project. So those are things we need to be very conscious of and mindful of. We should have explicit planning, possibly maps. If Alderman Jettie is going to help us make this decision, we should have maps clearly showing how things are going to be done there and who it's going to affect, so that we don't run into years of unintended consequences coloring a project, which ultimately should be about cleaning up a neighborhood and providing access to an area of the city that right now is not benefiting our residents. So I think there's a lot of potential in this project for greatness, but I think we're stakeholders too as aldermen. We need a very detailed understanding of what we're actually being involved in and what is at stake. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Madam President. Director Cummings, and perhaps maybe the mayor, if you want to chime in. I know it is way, way, way too early, so let's kind of talk about in the hypothetical. Right now, the city of Nashua really is doing quite well with some of the bonding, that we have done like in the past and everything. We paid off some of them and everything. So we have a pretty good deal. And as the current financing is sitting right now, the bonding is looking pretty good. And I just wonder if this is like one of those projects where it would be a hand in glove to go with the bonding. And if that is the case, and is looks like if we can get the principles of everybody involved kind of nailed down on this, can we get some form of scheduling so that maybe we can look at the bonding? Because my greatest fear is I do not have the financial crystal ball. I don't, Mr. Mayor, I don't think you do, and I know Mr. Cummings doesn't. But in working with Mr. Fedett, right now the current climate isn't really that bad. So it could we use that as a trip, Mr. Cummings, in talking with the principals and everything to say that bring up the bonding issue, the affordability of the bonding issues and different things like that to start to get some of the dates and everything nailed down to make us a partner in this, you know, while the going is right now would be considered, you know, financially feasible.
I thank you for the question, Alderman O'Brien. I think you raise a really good point, and you use the term partner, and that's exactly what is being asked of us, is to become a financial partner. And I think, you know, like any good financial partner, you need to do due diligence and understand how to underwrite the deal. And I, you know, at this time, I can't even begin to do that. Yes, I do think we have the bonding capability that, you know, but we also have a lot of demands and we have a lot of needs as well. And so it's going to be a balancing act moving forward. And I think we need to go slow on our end and really understand what it is that that we're talking about and what it is that we're committing to. So anyway, so that's my recommendation at this time. We need more information. But I really wanted to talk to you all tonight to just kind of get a sense of whether we really still wanted to have a TIF on the table. It sounds as though, yes, there's a small appetite for a TIF still, which I can continue to represent. That's what I'm hearing. And please, if I'm hearing wrong, let me know. But Alderman Lopez raised a really good point, and he's correct. When this conversation first started 3 years ago, the idea was we wouldn't even use a TIF for the environmental remediation. Now, all deals change as time goes on. And I can tell you right now, the thought process would be is some of that TIF dollars would go to the environmental remediation. So if anyone has a concern about that, you know, I would like to know that because it's going to be important for us to be able to structure this deal to move forward.
Madam President, just an additional comment. If you're looking for support on the TIF at this particular time, as presented to me, I will support a TIF. Thank you.
Additional, the biggest demand we have in terms of bonding right now is, of course, the middle school project, which at 110 million plus, you know, is very significant. So I think that has to be our priority.
Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Madam President. There have been a lot of good points made by, you know, my fellow aldermen. And, you know, Director Cummings, you ask, you know, on the one hand, you tell us that there are a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of you know, a lot of answers that you've asked for that you haven't received yet. On the other hand, you're asking for some kind of sense of the board as to, you know, what we would be in favor of. You know, I think Alderman Tenza said it, and that is that there just right now there are just too many unanswered questions for us to give, at least for me, to give you any kind of a sense as to what I would be in favor of, you know, a TIF or anything else. I think I think we need more information. I think the questions have to be answered. I think the questions you've asked have to be answered. You know, I know that, you know, some of the aldermen have expressed concern about you know, this property, you know, the people responsible for contaminating the property, you know, are not the ones being asked to pay for it. I'm not sure what the status of Chester Realty is. I think they went into bankruptcy, but I'm not sure. You know, is the purchase and sale agreement that the developer has, is it with Chester Realty? Are they going to be getting any money out of this? You know, I think, you know, those are legitimate questions. You know, the other thing is we've got a bad situation, and it's not going to get any better just by letting it sit there. You know, I think remediation has to occur. And, you know, what we have to figure out is how do we best accomplish that? You know, you know, there are, you know, the proposals, I think the EPA has told us that, you know, that removing the contaminants from the property, which I think some of the neighbors would like, is just, you know, is not something that they are going to support because of the expense and the fact that it's, you know, when we remove it from here, it's going to go somewhere else, as you pointed out. So, you know, I think the EPA's plan, you know, seemed, you know, to have as many safeguards, you know, as is possible. Nothing is 100% guaranteed. You know, I'm concerned, you know, as the mayor pointed out, the neighbors are uphill from this site. If it migrates, it's going to migrate down to the river, into the river, and then you know, where it's going to go from there, downriver. So, you know, this could be a very disastrous turn of events unless we do something about it. It sounds like we've got an opportunity to do something about it. And I think working with this developer seems to be the, you know, a reasonable solution. But you know, I want to make it clear to you that I'm not ready to support anything until, you know, we have all the information we need to make the best decision that we can. So thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Oh, I wasn't expecting to be next. Thank you. I have to echo what Alderman Jetty said. I think that this has been a good discussion. I think there's a lot of questions that people on this board have, including, you know, some basic knowledge of where that project has gone, even since the last non-aldermanic conversation. And I don't know how I can say I support a TIF when I don't know what the plan is.
Anyone else? Alderman Clemens.
Yeah, I concur with Alderwoman Kelly and Alderman Jetty. You know, this could be the plan forward. But again, in order to sell me, at least, speaking for myself, I need to see a real solid plan that lays everything out all the way into the 100 years from now. And that's, you know, without that, it can't in good conscience, even though, yeah, it may be better temporarily, I can't in good conscience support something that I don't have all the answers to. So yes, I guess a TIF, yeah, it might be a good solution, but again, the devil's in the details. And in this particular project, details really matter. I'm never one to shy away from jumping on board with, with a development plan or a really good idea. But when it comes to stuff like this, it's people's health, and we have to be very careful. So,
Alderman Lopez.
I have a question through the chair to Attorney Bolton.
Sure.
If we do approve a TIF or move forward in that direction, would we be able to contract stipulations for future years, including like the business holder would be willing to? Do they even have to agree to the TIF first of all? What is the point where we would want to insert a requirement for a property manager to contribute something towards public health or some entity being able to evaluate this that the city has control over? Or alternatively, if it was the TIF and we were going to reserve taxpayer money in the future towards environmental monitoring, what would that look like? And how would you recommend it?
Well, right now, you're not approving any deal. You're not approving any TIF. You're not approving anything tonight. And frankly, you're not approving anything or being asked to approve anything very soon. This deal is not done. There is going to be a lot of tinkering, a lot of negotiations before anything is reduced to writing. So yes, can you require other things before you approve any deal? Yes, you can require that the developer stand on his head in the middle of the parkway every April Fool's Day. It is a completely open book at this point as far as what you can require. Now, future monitoring. I fully expect none of these deals happen without that being a requirement. Now, whether it goes on for 100 years, that I can't say, but there will be monitoring out for a long period of time in the future. It's not going to be done by the developer's custodian. It's not going to be done by any of the city employees. It is going to be done by an environmental engineering firm who knows how to do it, will take the readings from the monitoring well that are installed pursuant to specifications that the EPA will approve, and then reports will be generated. It's very likely that copies of those reports will be provided to the city, will be provided to DES, perhaps EPA as well, perhaps the Army Corps of Engineers. Those reports will contain a certification by a qualified engineer, probably on the list of approved firms that the state and federal government have vetted over the course of time. And that certification will provide that there is no breach of the slurry walls, no leaks from the containment vault. And those will be monitored on a periodic basis, perhaps as often as once a year. When there are problems, presumably the documents will require that the developer or the developer's successor in interest has to provide for whatever necessary repair or remediation is then required. Now, how do you provide for that going forward in perpetuity? Well, if you've got a commercial facility that is going to be passed from owner to owner of the entire complex, and that facility will be generating revenue, a stream of revenue extending out indefinitely, you somehow get a security interest in that stream, and you use that money to pay for whatever remediation is necessary. Now, if you're talking about the property being sold off to individual homeowners, condominium unit owners, there are ways to put these provisions in the documents, the condominium declaration, the homeowner documents, reference them in the deed upon sale of any unit or any home. When the problem occurs, the idea that you're going to take someone's home away if they don't pay the $1,000 assessment, you know, if you have 300 homes and you assess each $1,000 per year, perhaps you get $300,000 a year, maybe that goes to pay an appropriate amount toward remediation. But we don't know how much that's going to cost ever either. But if someone just can't afford it, are we really going to take their home away? So that's one of the worries that you can have today about what provision will you have for the financial viability in the event of something going wrong. All of these things, and that's just one, but all of these things have to be worked out, have to be the subject of negotiation, and that will happen. But I mean, there's nothing for you to approve tonight. I think if any of you feel like never, under no circumstances, will I ever approve a TIF, maybe you could say that, and if you mean it, that'll give Tim some idea of stay away from that going forward. But there's no point now in saying, well, I approve of TIFs or I don't approve of TIFs, or I want a TIF of X dollars, X percentage or Y percentage. We don't know enough now to even have a clue of what kind of numbers we're talking about. So, but anyway, long-winded way to say you're not foreclosing yourself from anything you may want in the future by anything you do tonight.
Alderman Lopez.
Yes, so I know I'm in the meeting too, and there's no actual motion or anything being proposed. My question was specifically, what would it look like if we were to put those provisions in? Because we are describing a very complicated endeavor that is only just getting off the ground, but which also has a little bit of a history behind it of miscommunication and confusion. So should we be looking at the TIF as a potential vehicle for mandating how that is done? Or would it be more likely, some of the things that you have referenced as possibilities is when the developer figures out what he wants to do we look at if he is subdividing it and selling it to people? Do we look at a condo association? Or, I mean, is there other tools that I haven't thought of, such as does the property currently own back taxes to the city, or something that we can use as leverage to say, okay, well, you can resolve this debt if you agree to the following?
I don't know the answer as to what the tax situation is. Maybe Tim does. But I don't think we're far enough along to start saying tonight what we might agree to. I think we have to wait and see. At some point, they're going to say they want the city to contribute up to X dollars. Now, if I were in one of your seats, I would say the city's contribution is going to be somewhere between none and very small. And you can further define that as you go along. But I suspect the initial proposal to the city will be for more than we really want to invest. And I think there'll be a lot of pushback initially, but eventually something will come before you. I think the way to finance the city's contribution over time seems like it would be appropriate. Well, frankly, whether you have a formal TIF or not, the thought process has to be the additional tax revenue from the development will offset whatever the city's expense has been. Now, a TIF makes that even more clear, but whether it's express or not, that has to be an underlying calculation. But yeah, are there things you haven't thought of yet? Probably. I'm sure there are things I haven't thought of yet. there may be things that are possible that I never get around to thinking of, but I think I will probably have some better ideas going forward than I have tonight.
Director Cummings,
I had a follow-up.
Thank you.
I think he's going to answer your question. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. If I may, there was a couple of points made recently and just want to circle back to them. Relative to the back taxes on the property, it's in and around $1 million owed to the city in Nashua at this time. Probably just a tick above that. Last time I looked, it was just under. So just, general purposes, you can think about of $1 million being owed on the, and again, to be clear, that is on the Mohawk Tannery parcels. I know Alderman Lopez had another follow-up. I can hold the rest of my comments if he wants to speak. I don't.
Yeah, that's helpful because my thought was if we are negotiating and one of those negotiations end up being how much are you going to pay now versus how much are you going to pay later, it would be a good idea to mention that this is a priority. Additionally, I know that TIF may be a solution for doing this, which ultimately is asking the property owner who's paying the taxes to not do anything. It's just ourselves assigning where we're going to send the money to in the future. So I guess my last question or comment on those lines would be to Attorney Bolton is, how specific can we make legislation for taxes? Can we create a tax specific to that property or specific to properties that are, associated with cleaning up a toxic waste dump that the person who owns that property has to contribute towards a fund to do that as a tax for owning that property?
Like
Well, in a TIF, you set the boundaries of the district, so you can be as specific as need be. And then the principle is you establish what the tax is being paid prior to the establishment of the TIF. And then anything over and above that number is, for lack of a better word, the excess. That excess over existing tax revenue is available to pay for public improvements. So a public improvement might be the containment of the contamination. And you can devote all of that excess tax revenue to that. You can devote any percentage short of 100%. So you'd say 50%, you can say 30%. I think you need to know the dollars you're talking about and the amount that the city is going to contribute. And as I say, I think the city's contribution is envisioned not to be the lion's share and not even close to that. So yes, you can be very specific in what properties will in fact be paying. Now, in other circumstances, you can say that a specific public improvement benefits specific properties. And instead of generally taxing all of the taxpayers in the city for a project that benefits specific properties, you can make a betterment assessment against these specific properties that are in fact bettered by the public improvement. So Nashua hasn't done this in recent decades, but it's the kind of thing that some communities do if they're putting in sidewalks where there haven't been sidewalks before. And then they will divide it up by the linear measurement, the number of feet of sidewalks in front of each particular property, and divide it by the cost and make an assessment, per foot for every property that the sidewalk goes by. Now, I don't know that this particular type project lends itself to that kind of assignment of betterment per project. I think this probably does lend itself a little better to the TIF formula, but there are degrees and methods and creative ways to do things, and many of them I'm sure will be explored before we're finished with this.
You all set, Alderman Lopez?
Yeah, I mean, I know we're not making a decision tonight. I just wanted to know what some of the general tools we would have are. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderman Jettie.
I'm sorry, Madam President, I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Jettie. Is there anyone else? Director Cummings.
Thank you, Madam President. If no one else has anything to say, I'll wrap things up here.
I wanted to add
So,
something just before you wrap up. I've been familiar with this site since I was a kid, lived, just a couple blocks away on Broad Street. In fact, my brother-in-law worked there, and it was awful. It was an awful, smelly, dirty place. And the neighbors have been waiting for 30 plus years for the city to take some action, for someone to improve this site in their neighborhood. And, I think we owe it to them to do what we can, as much as we can. I'm not saying financially, but as much work as we can put into this to make that a safe neighborhood for everyone. I think we owe it to our constituents and to the city. And I want to thank Director Cummings. I wouldn't take the TIF off the table. I mean, I think everything's got to be on the table right now. It has to be, right? Because we don't really have much else going. So you put everything out there and then you pick and choose and fine tune it and then decide which way you want to go, right? So that's all I have tonight. You're up, Director Cummings.
thank you, Madam President. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, is just have this kind of open dialogue, hear everyone's thoughts, because it's, everything's going to get put on the table. We're going to shake some things out. Some things are going to stick. We're going to, and we're going to need to go down the path. And what I'm asking, and I was looking for some direction on, is, knowing very high level stuff, no details. Is it worth us doing the work? Because there's a lot of work that's before us. And I know that we're going to need to commit to doing certain things. And if it's absolutely not in the realm of a possibility of us doing, because it's just adamant and we're not entertaining these things and we're adamantly at a no, well, that's just the kind of direction and feedback I'm looking for. We have a lot of, discussion before us. There's going to be a lot of communication necessary. Please, I hope anyone on this board reaches out to me if they have a question, they want to suggest an idea. We need, I need that direction. I need that feedback, and hopefully I can represent some sort of consensus and bring it before you and provide a recommendation, which I am not able to do any of those things at this time. As Alderman Jettie pointed out with his comments a little while back, I've asked repeatedly for the purchase and sale agreement that Baylock has with the current owner. I would like to review that because I would like to make sure that I know what the current owner may or may not be receiving for the sale in terms of proceeds, and that, again, just doing our due diligence. So there are a lot of open-ended questions right now. We don't have a lot of answers, but this is the start of a conversation which could be very beneficial to the neighborhood and which could be really the only real solution that we have for the neighborhood. If we don't move in a direction, we could just live with the status quo. And that's the alternative. And I don't think folks want to do that. At the end of the day, I think we want to improve that land so it can be developed in whatever way folks want. So I thank everyone for their time this evening. I will be back to you with more information as the conversation progresses. And please feel free to follow up with me if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Director Cummings. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make the motion that the March 15, 2021 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned by roll call.
The motion is to adjourn. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien,
Yes.
Alderman Clee,
Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly,
Yes.
Alderman Dow,
Yes.
Alderman Karen,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Tenza,
Yes.
Alderwoman Lou,
Yes.
Alderman
Yes.
Jettie,
Yes.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Laws,
Yes.
Alderman Cleaver,
Yes.
Alderman Harriet Gathright,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire.
Yes.
You have 15 yeas and 0 nays.
And that motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Stay
Night,
warm.
everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Right.